In this video, we're going to learn how to use the navigation system in the OH-58D Kiowa Warrior from Polychop. The footage used in this video is pre-release software and is intended for promotion and training purposes. Its visual and audio qualities may not represent the final product. Alright guys, welcome aboard the OH-58D Kiowa Warrior from Polychop for DCS World, and today we're going to talk about the navigation system. And first thing we're going to do is start with the alignment. So I'm going to go through a quick startup, and what's going to happen is it's going to start an auto alignment. So I'll show you what that looks like. Let me just get my switches set. So ignition, FADEC, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my anti-collision light, and I'm going to go ahead and just click on battery now. Crack my throttle to idle. Go ahead and turn my key. Wait for my audio. And if we go to the initial page, go to nav align, we can see that we're already in auto GC aligned. So the aircraft is already starting to get its alignment. We'll go ahead and continue with the startup and then wait for that alignment to complete. All right, so I've got the aircraft fully powered up. We're at 100%. Let me hit my anchor dinker and get that solid. And we can see that we're still doing alignment. So it's going to take about 4 minutes. So again, you can get the aircraft up and running and you're still going to be waiting on that alignment, but it's like pretty much any other aircraft. It's going to take a few minutes for that to complete. But once it's done, we're going to see GC align disappear and we're going to see auto unbox. All right, so GC align is gone, auto is unboxed. So now the aircraft is aligned. The OH-58D, much like many other military aircraft, uses a blended arrangement, meaning it uses INS and GPS to work together. So the INS is that inertial navigation system, so it knows where it is now that it's aligned, it knows what direction it's going, what speed it's traveling, and so it tries to keep up. If you were to fly in only an INS mode, occasionally you would need to update it. It is something that older Kiowa pilots had to do or were trained to do more often. I know how to do it. I've never actually done it, but you essentially would use the MMS to align yourself by looking at a known point, lasing it. We're not going to get into that because we're not too worried about it. We're not going to be fighting in a GPS denied zone. So we're just going to leave that in the blended mode. Now what we're going to dive into a little bit is the HSD and how to set things up. Of course, we can set all that up while we're waiting for the alignment to complete. And in the real aircraft behind us, we would actually put in our data cartridge and load up most of this data. Unfortunately with DCS, we don't really have a good data cartridge system. So let's take a look at the HSD. All right, so on our MFD, again, we can start at our initial page if we like, but right here at the bottom, we're going to see HSD. So we're going to press that and you see HSD plus. If we press it again, this is the plus feature, is the moving map. Now, this is not a big deal to you watching, but this was a big deal when it came out. The OH-58D was the first glass cockpit aircraft in the military, and the moving map was a big deal at the time, and it still is really a mainstay in most glass cockpit aircraft to date. But we can just rotate between using those, and it depends on if you like it or not. All right, taking a look at around the screen, of course, we've got this engine data that we can reference if we need to. All right, so starting up here is how we set up a direct waypoint. We can start a route, end a route. I don't have a route built. We'll go ahead and build a small one here in a few moments. Nav update, this is a flyover point. All right, so as we're flying along, if we were to hit nav update, it would drop a target, in this case, target 99 Tango, would drop right where we were when you hit that button. You can also do that now on the cyclic with the hover bob up button. We never used the hover bob up button, so they reprogrammed it years and years ago to act as this same thing. So we're just going to reject. We don't want to do that. This is our current position. This is just for scale. This is how we change the scale. We'll go to plus. It'll make more sense. You can see that the scale of our map is changing. Map center, map offset. So again, it gives you more map to look at that's in front of you because you may not care about so much what's behind you. Active routes, we can have 3 routes plugged into the system. Of course, with the mission editor, we can only build the one, but we'll take a look at that here in a few moments. Nav setup, this is where we access those routes. We can create those routes. We can create new waypoints. Take a look at the waypoints that we have in the system. Create some battlefield graphics. some control points, reverse the active route. So if we went forward along a route, we could reverse that and go back the other direction. And then here is our new target and target list. We'll dig into that here momentarily. All right, so let's take a look at nav setup, and we're going to create some waypoints. So all we're going to do is hit new waypoint, and it's going to fill up from the bottom of the list, and that's the same for targets. So remember what I talked about, that nav update dropping a target point. You notice it started at 99. So we've got 99 targets and 99 waypoints we can use. When we start building stuff, or we have something brought in from the data cartridge, we want to start from the lowest number and work our way up. And the aircraft kind of knows that. And so what it's going to do is start populating from the back end of the list and moving forward when we start dropping targets. And that'll make more sense later as we talk about the mass mounted sight and the more tactic side of things. All right, so we want to drop a waypoint, create a waypoint, and we're going to call that one 1 Whiskey. All right, so we need to figure out where we're going to go. So I'm going to go to the F10 map, and I'm going to find my FARP here at my range, and I'm going to hit left alt and my left mouse button, and it's going to drop that point. So now we've got that point. I'm going to go back into the cockpit, and we can type that in. So I'm going to hit position, and it's already populating the grid zone identifier because it assumes that we're going to be in this area. So 31 uniform, that is correct, 31 uniform. And we'll just go over to the keyboard unit, and we've got Charlie Sierra 3682 6925. Now you'll notice that I'm not putting the full 10-digit because this aircraft takes an 8-digit grid. So I'm going to type that in, hit enter. Elevation, now the computer already has data on board, so it thinks it knows how high that is, and it's showing 20 meters. It does have that. So we can click that off. We're going to hit enter. All right, the datum, that's just map data. We don't need to worry about that. And then we can actually assign this as a pre-point for our mass mounted sight, and we'll talk about what the pre-points do in a later video. But if that's something that we wanted to orient the sight, let's say that it is a waypoint that's going to be a battle position. Well, we probably want to take a look at it before we get there to make sure that there's no bad guys or something sitting there. So we could hit pre-point, and then we can hit store. It's going to flash for a second. All right, so now it's ready to take the second waypoint. I'm going to put one more in there so that we can build a route. Now I've got new data for my second waypoint. So all we're going to do is go over here, and we can clear that out, or we can backspace. Just going to hit backspace a few times. All right, and 3529 7006. Enter. Okay, it's got the elevation. We'll hit enter. So now we have waypoint 2. Go ahead and set pre-point and store. All right, so if we go up to waypoint list, we can see we've got our present position, and then we've got waypoints 1 and 2 that we've already created. We'll go back to nav setup. We're going to go to route 1. So we're going to add a leg. So we said 1 whiskey and 2 whiskey. And we could change the route name. We'll just call that range. All right, range, enter. And we'll go back to nav setup. We can see route is set to range. So we're going to go back to the HSD page. We can see the route is right there on our HSD, and our waypoint is set 3.7 kilometers away. It's 1 whiskey. So we could hit start route, or we can hit next point, and it's going to take us to the next point along the list. And as you can see, we can have multiple here. It's just going to process through. And the same thing on the VSD. We can go to next point, previous point very simply. If we did have different routes set up, we can again rotate through that active route and activate whichever route we want to use. So one route could be getting us to the target area, route 2 could be getting us to a secondary area, and route 3 could be getting us back home, whatever you want to do. Now I'm just going to go to active route 2 to get rid of that route so it's not already active in here, and just talk about direct point. So if I wanted to go direct to 1 whiskey, enter, I can verify the grid, all that data, and just hit store, and now we are up direct waypoint, and this line should move as we move, and this information will of course change as we get closer. Now if we wanted to go back to where we were, we could just hit return route and we've got nothing set up. You can also just plug in a grid, so if somebody gives you a grid, it tells you a place to go, you could just go to position and fill out all that data. Just verify that that 31 uniform or whatever populates there is correct. All right, going back to nav setup, we'll just take a look real quick. New target. It is essentially the same thing. It's going to start at 1 tango because this is something that we're planning as opposed to something that we're doing on the fly, like when we drop with our hover bob up button right here, or do something with the MMS. So it's going to tell us, okay, 1 tango is what you want. We'll hit enter. We can change the position, put in whatever grid we want to, and then that will of course change the elevation based on the database that the aircraft has on board. Once again, we can hit pre-point, have that pre-established for us, and then we just hit store. If you're one of those weirdos that likes lat long, you can also rotate it and insert the lat long. I don't advise it. Right, last we'll take a look at the control points. Once again, this is very similar to what we've already done, so we can establish a new control point. Let's change that off of that dreaded lat long. Once again, just like waypoints, we're just going to put in that data. We can hit pre-point, we can hit store. So I'm just going to put in a couple real quick so that we can mess with the battlefield graphics. So just I'll be right back. All right, putting in the last waypoint, one thing I do want to address, like we said, this is in meters. If we switch this over to lat long, it's going to give us the feet, so that way you can verify if you're worried about that not being the same thing. All right, so right now I've built 4 control points. They've stored. We go to the control point list. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got all the data. Now let's take a look at the battlefield graphics. There's a couple ways we can do things here. I'm going to create a line. We'll call it line 1. Enter, and it's just like creating a route. So I'm gonna put 1 Charlie, and then add a leg. We'll call it 4 Charlie. Right. We'll go to the HSD. Let me scale in just a little bit. All right, it's kind of hard to see, but we can see here that we've got 1 Charlie and 4 Charlie, which is where I built it, and there's a line connecting them. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new line between 1 and 2. All right, so we've connected 1 and 2. We go back to the HSD and we can see that 2 Lima right there, it's written in the center. You've got 1 Charlie and 2 Charlie. Now if we want to delete one of these lines, we can hit delete, put in which one we want to delete, and it'll remove. All right, so let's build an area. And we'll just add in all of those points. So 1 Charlie, add leg, 2 Charlie, and so forth. And if we want to change the area name, we can just type in what we want, and we can see area 1 is now the range. Go back to my HSD. That is down where I established that range, setting up my waypoint. So if I go to active list, we can see 1 whiskey, 2 whiskey, and it's hard to see, but they're all mixed up in there on the range. If I go direct point to 1 whiskey, enter, store, I've got that line. Direct point down to the entry of my range where my FARP is at, and then I've got the battlefield graphics of that range established on my HSD. Now I keep showing you this stuff. It's kind of hard to see. It's way off over here. There's a way that we can fix this. It's called the Rotocraft mapping system, the RMS. So we're here on the HSD page. We're going to hit RMS, and this is more of an updated feature with later models of the aircraft. And it brings up this scale here. We can change our chart. We can show no data. We can show the actual map charts, and then the digital terrain elevation database. So this is just showing us that there's some high ground around us, things like that. We can zoom in. We can slew. We'll talk about that in a second. We can once again do the offset, change our scale, and we may not get the same map data or DTED data based on the scale. Heading is which way the map is facing. So this is heading up and then north up. I'm basically facing north, so you're not going to see a whole lot of change there. Overlays on and off, so we can go into the setup and we can see what overlays exist. We can have waypoints, targets, all those lines and areas, control points, all the things that we've created. We've got all these things active, so they should be showing. So I'm going to go back to the RMS. But like I said, we can't really see very well the things that we had done. You can see a little bit better on the screen. So let's just take a look down there. What we can do is hit slew, and I've already plugged it in once, so it's defaulting to that. But all we can do is just change. We can put in whatever grid we want, or we can just put in one of our waypoints. So I'm going to put in 2 whiskey. And you can see the map has slewed, so that center of the map is there at whatever waypoint we put in. There's the grid for the waypoint, and we can always change that back to another point. All right, so why is this useful? Once again, if we're trying to do a little map reconnaissance prior to heading into a target area or something like that, we've already built some graphics, or we just have a grid. We can just type that in, take the map over there, and get an idea of what we're walking into. If we want to go back to where we were, we just hit unslew, and it comes right back to our aircraft. If we go to direct waypoint, let me put in 1 whiskey once again, direct waypoint, store, and we go back to RMS. We see that that line is also going to appear. If we go into setup, we can sort of change how some of this stuff looks. Remove some of those IDs, leave the lights on, you know, whatever you want to do, just kind of have a play with it and see what works for you. All right, so as you can see, it's pretty simple to set up the navigation system and get your waypoints going. You're going to spend a lot of time on this keyboard. Yes, it's not set up like a QWERTY keyboard like you're used to. I'll be honest with you, I spent a lot of time in this aircraft twirling my finger in a circle looking for the right letter, no matter how many hours I flew in it, and most guys I flew with the same thing. So you're just kind of hunting and pecking, looking for the stuff, and it's a lot of fun when you're bouncing around. It's dark, but you can fight through it. The more you can do on the ground prior to takeoff, the better off your flight is going to be. So do some performance planning, do some mission planning, punch that stuff in early, and then you can make some adjustments on the fly. Anyhow, I hope this is helpful and gets you guys started with navigation in the Kiowa Warrior. I appreciate you guys watching. A big thank you, as always, to Patreon and YouTube members for supporting the channel, and a big thanks to Polychop for allowing me the access to the Kiowa and letting me share this information with you guys. We will talk to you later on the next one. Take it easy.